What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Talking to the Doll Benfica podcast. Steve. I'm still a little bit perturbed from the result over this weekend, man. So I apologize. I'm going to apologize to the fans right away. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Talking to the Doll Benfica podcast, episode number 280. On tonight's podcast, we will look back at the Classico that happened this past weekend, and we'll also look ahead to Benfica's next game against Estoril at Coimbra da Motra. We'll meet tonight Steve Santos. What's going on, Steve?
Uh, you know, had better few days than the past few ones that just were after the Porto game. But hey, moving on.
Yeah, no, that's right. Cristiano is supposed to be joining us at any time. Uh, Dave de Oliveira is actually in Portugal. He tried to join us, but obviously with being late in Portugal, and I know that he's been doing a little bit of traveling, he's not going to be able to join us. But he was kind enough to send some stats in, so we'll have those stats for you as always. But here we are, Steve, on post game of what we thought was going to be the game of the season. And as it turns out, and as it stands right now, it is the game of the season. But before we get into the game, I'll give you the lineup, and I'll just give a brief description of the events that happened. So Benfica started in goal with Varela. Almeida was right back. Diaz and Jardel in the middle of the defense. Grimaldo was left back. Fesa, Pizzi, and Zivkovic in the triangle in the midfield. Rafa on one wing, Servi on the other wing, and Jimenez up front by himself. So there was hopes that we were going to be able to recuperate Jonas for this game. As it turns out, wasn't meant to be. He ended up not even making the bench. Ended up in the stands, and I think that Steve, right away, we have to have an uneasy feeling, right? Because despite Jonas not being a guy that produces or that scores a lot of goals against our direct opponents, he's still a guy that could do some damage.
Oh, for sure. M- the most important player on our squad, we'd have to say. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. What he does on top of those numbers is basically what makes him extra special. So yeah, you're missing, if not your most important players, at least one of them. If you other people would bring face into the mix and maybe one or two others, but um, huge miss. I
Yeah.
mean, huge miss. You see that he doesn't even make the bench, and I I know both of us and Chris were not completely confident, but I don't think anybody was really expecting him not to play. Based on it looked like it was more like a precautionary measure
Yeah.
um, in the last game versus Stubble. So yeah, I didn't go throughout the week being nervous that he was or wasn't going to play. I'll have to give you that. I mean,
Yeah.
I was at ease really, and I was wrong,
And
which really sucks.
as it stands, and as we come to find out, it's due to exhaustion. That's what was explained, and what I read in the media was that was due to exhaustion. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go for Sturil or not. But nonetheless, I mean, once you see that him not being in the lineup, not even being on the bench, you gotta feel. And despite that, Jimenez has been doing okay. It's not the same with without Jonas there. Anyway, Benfica came out. I thought they played pretty well the first half. They came to Porto. They were fast. They had intensity in their movement. I thought that overall, and not by much, I thought that they had the edge over Porto in the first half. Hit the post. A couple good saves by Casillas. One of them on a tight angle from Servi. The other one on an incredible miss by Pizzi. That I think that even my grandmother would have probably put that one away. But those are things that happened, and it's the guys that are in there that are paid to decide, and it just so happens that it wouldn't come to be. Benfica walks into the locker room, comes out of the locker room. different Porto altogether into the second half, and Porto did have that edge over us. So, Steve, let's just talk through some of the things that you saw from Porto in the second half that really prevented us from being that dominant. If you want to say dominant in the first half, I mean in the
Well,
second half.
the biggest thing in the first half, Porto seemed to play a lower block and allow us to play from the back a little bit. I want to say easier than what we would expect, which allowed us to create some chances. Not enough clear cut ones, I'd say. Even though we did hit the post, that was a tight angle. The one big chance is the Pizzi one, like you mentioned. But in the second half, they really seemed to step up the pitch a good 10, 15 meters, yards, however you want to call it. And the way that we were coming out of the back was not the same. I mean, we weren't able to get the ball to Pizzi to Zivkovic anymore. The ball was more often than not when we actually could get the ball because Porto were obviously in better form in the second half. Was a longer one into Jimenez, and Jimenez, for the most part of the game, basically lost it every time he got it. Whether it was trying to speed up the game too much, trying to maybe do something that he wasn't capable of doing in that one possession. He just, that's one of the things where I felt we missed Jonas the most in the second half when Porto were superior. We're not going to try to say that they weren't. They were playing at a completely different intensity level than they were in the first half. Not having Jonas's expertise and technical ability too, but the expertise. I mean, Raul, when he had the opportunities to basically cover up the ball and force a foul, was opening the ball to the defender and allowing them to get a foot in and come back the other way. Jonas wouldn't do that. Jonas, if there was nothing else on, Jonas would just cover it and say, "Okay, foul me," or I'll
Yeah,
wait till something shows up that I can play. And Raul doesn't have that. And I think if we're looking at something that we were definitely missing Jonas for, that's in the second half that was huge. In the first half, maybe he would have put away a chance, and maybe he would have created another one or two, but that's a lot of ifs. But
yeah,
for sure, I mean, that was a blatant thing that I noticed in the second half.
yeah. And
Uh,
go ahead.
Porto's intensity level also was from first half to second completely different. I think the first half they saw us, we were superior, albeit not, we weren't amazing, but we're definitely on top of the game. Weren't able to capitalize. Porto, I believe it was Marega that missed a good chance basically right before or right after the Pizzi one. It's very close in time. And they go into the locker room knowing that that's probably the best that we could put out, and we didn't come away with anything or even that many chances. So I think Porto goes in with a little bit of pride, with some confidence left, and a team talk from Sergio Conceição, and they come back with
Yeah.
a completely different mindset.
Yeah, and look, that I think that that save by Casillas at the end of the half, obviously is something that inspires confidence by the Porto team, considering what the history is. Whenever Benfica has faced Casillas, Casillas has taken a couple games from Benfica, has saved Porto on a couple occasions. So when you see Casillas make a save like that, you go into the locker room, you got to feel encouraged. I think that in the locker room they got that booster shot from Sergio Conceição, that intensity, and the team came out to play. As you were mentioning, when they raised up their lines, I think that once you raise up your lines and you kind of force Benfica because Benfica is pressed to play the long ball, and then when we hit Jimenez, his inability to be able to shield the ball, to wait for the rest of the guys to join him, we were just turning the ball over. I forget how many times Varela was punting the ball going long, or even the center backs going long with those balls because Porto was playing so high. But here's the thing, and this is something that we've seen throughout the season, right? And I don't know what kind of team talks Rui Vitoria does at the half, but so many times we've seen Benfica have kind of two very distinct halves, right? The first half is good. The second half, they come out, they're a little bit lethargic. It almost seems that the pep talk or the halftime talk was too long, and it kind of put the players to sleep. But this is something that we have seen Benfica do all season. Come out for the second half, and you're not the same, not in the same manner that you finished off the half. So I really don't know what happened there, but the thing is that Conceição made the adjustments. I think that Rui Vitória struggled to make those adjustments, and sometimes he has made good substitutions. But I just think that maybe he didn't have it this way, or I don't know if he was surprised. I don't know if there's some kind of where he's fearing or that he wants to hold the result. I really don't know. But the Benfica that came out in the second half was a totally different team from the first half.
I think another to go back to Jonas again, not using Jonas as an excuse because Porto also were missing an important player to them in Danilo. So I'm not going to try to say, oh, because we didn't have Jonas, blah, blah. But having Jonas in the stands and Jimenez starting the match, it leaves you with not
No
many guys on the
options.
leaves you with not many guys on the bench that change the game. I mean, change the game in a positive way. Uh, we have some kids that we've seen in flashes that I think to put any of them at in that atmosphere would have been tough, especially with Porto on the up. Um, but I think that's another one of the things that pushes the game in the way that it goes. Uh, Porto step up, the game starts to get a, a lot more broken, a lot more spaces in between lines, both of ours and theirs. Uh, that's where Rui Vitória goes and makes his first change.
Yeah.
I think trying to at least get some defensive cover on the right side that Salvio is more adept to, more known for than Rafa. And that's where I think you start looking at whether or not you're brave enough or what your intentions are showing to the rest of the squad. Um, Rafa in a game that's broken like that is at his most dangerous, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I could see him trying to protect that side of the pitch, seeing that that's how where Brahimi was operating for most of the first half and a little bit of the second half, but that kind of changed as the game progressed, and then he made another change to, I feel, gain control of that as well. Uh, but if I had one gripe to really look at it and what really I didn't agree with, what was bringing off Hoffa. I mean, the game was broken. It was broken for both teams.
Yeah.
Um, and if it broke properly or in a way that Rafa could exploit his pace and his 1v1 ability, it could have went in our favor. That's a lot of ifs, I know,
Yeah.
but
And
there's that saying that fortune favors the brave, and I feel like it might have went in that direction.
yeah, let's talk through the substitutions, right? Because that seems to be a big sticking point and a big talking point for a lot of the fans in the substitutions. Obviously, as you mentioned, Savi coming in for Rafa, and look, I get it. I get that. th- Playing devil's advocate, I understand that Rafa is perhaps the guy that could give us more verticality. And as you mentioned, the way the game was perhaps the best game for Rafa to be in there because he's a guy that can attack the space. And since there was a lot of space there, obviously a good scenario for him. But playing devil's advocate and being that Benfica was now being kind of pressed against in their half. I thought that the reasoning behind it, and I don't even want to go into a conspiracy theory that Rui Vitoria's plan was always to bring Salvio, regardless of what the game plan and regardless of what the game asked for. I don't want to get into that, but I think that the reasoning behind that is like, all right, we need somebody that could drop in the lines and that could build out of the back. And I think that when you look at both Rafa and Salvio, two different players, right? Two guys that rely on speed, but I think that Salvio is probably a guy that's going to withstand the physicality of play coming out of the back rather than Rafa. How many times have we seen Rafa on a shoulder to shoulder challenge and Rafa goes down, or a more robust 50-50 and Rafa goes down? So perhaps that was the logic behind Vitoria's move, that he wanted somebody that could drop deep and could carry the ball, that could combine and wouldn't be affected by the physicality and the high press that Porto was exerting on Benfica at the time. So that's how I kind of read that substitution. I get it, man. I get it that Rafa was our most dangerous player at the time and is perhaps the guy that could give us the most. But I don't know that if you leave Rafa in there and Porto is still high pressing and all we're doing is hoofing the ball up, that's not going to do us much good because Rafa needs the ball at his feet and he needs room in front of him to play. And I don't know if Benfica had the capability to get the ball to Rafa's feet at that point with room in front of him.
And I agree. And then that's when his next change makes it even harder to do that. And
Yeah.
I feel by protecting the spaces in front of the center backs in between lines and bringing on Samaris, and he basically, the way I saw it when he came in and the way it looked like he explained it to Faces, looked like they were splitting the pitch from left to right. Face would stick to the right, Samaris would stick to the left, and they were going to basically cover up the spaces in front of the back four. At that point, the team gets very disjointed. Pizzi gets, for me, too far up the pitch, and he didn't have a good second half, but he also, for me, wasn't in an area that allowed him to influence anything either. Rarely got the ball. When he got the ball, he was, for me, too tight to the center backs or to the defensive midfielder, and I would have liked him deeper so that maybe we could spring an attack forward or maybe hold on to the ball instead of giving it away.
Yeah.
But again, there's logic in his change because there was an Porto's danger, or the most dangerous player in Porto is absolutely Brahimi. He was starting to show up a lot more off of the wing and more in between lines. So I get that he was trying to reinforce that area again. In hindsight, it looks like it was a really bad move, but he was close, man. He was close. I mean, if he gets that tie, I don't know how much of this conversation is tinged the way it is right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, and here's the thing, man. I get that he needs to put in Samaris to basically block up or to take up those spaces between lines, or close up those spaces in between lines. But he puts in Samaris, pulls out Servi, and then 12 minutes later he pulls Pizzi out and puts in Seferovic.
That's the one that's
So
the biggest question mark for me.
that is a weird. So I mean, you take a midfielder to put her. I mean, you take a winger, a guy that could create some problems and has some speed. And look, I don't know how much gas Servi still had in the tank, but you put Samaris in, and then you take Pizzi, who had a poor second half, and the first half wasn't too much better. But you leave Pizzi in with 3 minutes to play, when you could have probably made that substitution earlier, when somebody came in, and you leave Servi in there to drift off a little bit to the middle and to
Or
be that,
Zivkovic.
or Zivkovic. You're right about that. That's the thing that I don't get. I mean, his substitutions are a
that
huge talking point.
the one that I act the one that I can't put any reasoning behind is that last one. I mean, like you say, it could have been earlier. Um, could have been Pizzi coming off earlier. Could have left Servi. There was just no. That's the one that for me I couldn't find any sense in. But and then the goal came soon after that, if I remember right, and it was not fun.
Yeah.
It was taking the wind out of your sails, as they say. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, look. I mean, the goal is a play of insistence by Porto. Is it's all players are bunched up. There's no one that could get a foot on that ball to clear it, and there's enough room in there for Herrera to fire out a shot. Uh, I thought he was with the space that he had and the range of movement that he could get. I thought he was lucky to be able to get that type of a shot with that type of quality and beat Varela like he did. But nonetheless, you got to think that this is a team that has has come forward. They wanted the game. They wanted to win. And I think that overall, and regardless of being in the 90th minute or not, from what they did in the second half, you probably can't say that they didn't deserve the goal at the end.
Yeah, it's hard to say anything against that. How often does that ball end up in the stands? How often does Herrera not I don't know him as a player that well, but not have um
He's
the
not known.
guts?
I don't think he's known for the
I don't
outside
think so. I
shot.
don't think so either. But let's say didn't have the guts to take on that responsibility and just knocks it wide instead. I mean, it's not the type of shot that you're really going to be saying, "Oh, I'm prepared to see that happen," or "That's likely." I mean, it's a blast from outside the
Right.
box,
It's late in the game.
late in the game. It's not like a super likely situation. I think the play that kind of brings it on, where for me, Brahimi actually were doing all this work trying to stifle him. Finds a little bit too much space in between Salvio and Almeida, and he brings on the like a 1-2 type movement on the top of the box, and that's what brings on the whole mess, and that's kind of expected. But to say to say a blast from outside the 18-yard box is a likely outcome. No, you know what I mean. It's not the
Yeah.
type of thing. It's not the type of thing that you're like really fearing and expecting the worst from. I mean, that how many shots does he take from there that actually hit the back of the net? I don't know. Like I'm not huge on Herrera. I know everything about him, but I'd assume that he's not going to score 5 out of 10 of those shots, maybe even less, right? So
No, yeah. I really don't know him for a guy. He's not like a Bruno Fernandes that we've seen him
exactly,
execute those shots time and every now and again.
that would be something that would be on the back of my mind. Man, you can't let this guy have the space to shoot from out there. But
Exactly.
Herrera is not that's not a likely option for me.
Yeah, but
But
exactly.
that's the thing. If you're going to try to pin down this game to two fine details, to two fine moments, you have Pizzi with a good opportunity that squanders it. You have Herrera with half a chance, quarter of a chance, and nails it. And that's the fine line of winning or losing a championship. Maybe at this point, that's the fine line of Rui Vitoria being touted once again as a great coach, or now a lot of people are on his case saying that he lacked the courage to really go for it. But
So yeah, picking up on that lack of courage, what do you think it is? Is it lack of courage or lack of options to make the changes to properly influence the game?
um, knowing what we know about Rui Vitoria, there is a lack of know how to get that game back in his own hands before the need for changes
Right.
were. I mean, uh, Benfica has between Pizzi, Zivkovic, Servi, Rafa, a lot of very good ball players that were easily suffocated from the ball because we couldn't build from the back. Um, there's one thing there. Benfica doesn't have, for the most part, the routines and the very core set values of saying, okay, this is how we want to keep the ball. This is where, if you have the ball, you're expected to have passing option X, Y, Z. They don't really have that. So that's the first spot where Rui Vitoria is losing it. For me, I mean, that's been my criticism since day one. Although I'll be the first to admit, and I've said it recently, that this team with those creative players has probably played, uh, aside from versus Porto, especially in 2018, probably
And
the best football that I've seen under Rui Vitoria. But to go back to the lack of options, given what we knew about the guys on the bench, he did not have that game changer for me. He just didn't have it.
yeah,
Salvio at this day and age does he did have some plays where he was head down and beating a
but he's
few
too
guys,
isolated.
but he's super isolated. He no longer has that pace that he once did. So that takes that out. Seferovic, ordinary player.
Yeah,
I
but
think the
he hasn't played.
he hasn't played in. He's not the guy that, like, if it was Jonas starting and Raul comes on, you know that Raul's gonna bring that pace, that intensity. He's gonna
Yeah,
allow Jonas to do different things. Fine. Bringing on Seferovic with Raul already playing 60 or 70 minutes, not with the same energy levels that he normally does. You don't have that game changer, that player, that mechanism, whatever you want to call it, that is going to create a mismatch.
yeah,
That's gone. I think the only player that for me really makes a change, uh, in the system and in the game is bringing on a Samaris, but it's a defensive type change,
yeah,
which will bring on negative connotations with it, because as soon as you bring on Samaris, the idea is, okay, we're going to hold it, we're getting scared, et
yeah.
cetera, and that doesn't play well.
And when you look at that substitution that he made for Samaris in the 75th minute, you gotta realize, you gotta think that, and you got the way you read is you. This is a reactionary
Yeah,
substitution, so it's not something that he's reading the game. He's seeing how Porto has come out in those first 10, 15 minutes, and in the 60th minute, you're going to make a substitution that it's going to influence your game, or that's going to get your game back under control. And I think that when you take Rafa away, and regardless of whether Rafa was being your main threat or not, you have to make a substitution because you see the way Porto is pressing you, and you have to put a guy in the midfield to close up those lines and to push Porto back to get that midfield control back. But his substitution is in the 75th minute when it's already too late, that when Benfica's already given up 20 minutes of possession.
yeah. You could have played. You could have brought in Samaris at that point too. But then if you bring him in at that point, again, the negative connotation of bringing on a defensive midfielder for whoever he decides to take off is going to play into the stands, play into the 11 players on the pitch. So I get
The-
it. I get it. For me, the one thing is, for half of for me had to stay on the pitch just because the game was suiting what he likes to play, the way he likes to play, and that's where I was upset. Aside from that, I understood. Like, if you're worried about Brahimi, you're worried about Alex Telles, you put in a more defensive player on that side, fine. I get that one. You're worried about the spaces, you're knowing fairly well that if this game stays tied, destiny is in your hands. I get the Samaris change. But for me, Hafa has to stay on the pitch, and Seferovic, the change was weird.
yeah,
If we're going to go on and on about the subs.
yeah. You mentioned something about the move, how you put in guys, how it could be perceived by the stands, right? And one of the things that, and this has also been talked about in both social media and some of the blog sphere, was the fact that at one point Stadio de Luz quieted down. I mean,
Yeah,
Pietra had to come off the bench to pull the fans. I mean, we're talking about 63,000 people here that you can't interpret and you can't read that the team needs you the most at that moment, and the guy has to come out of the bench and try to motivate the crowds to get behind the team. Benfica's speaker, which is, yeah, I completely despise the fact that he started a song in the middle of the game. That
yeah, I
is
saw
the
that.
most ridiculous thing. That is not Benfica. That doesn't fall under the Benfica culture. But I mean, such was the desperation that the guy knew he was going to get fined for this. Yet he took to the microphone and he started to get the crowd on a chant because
It
the
was.
crowd was just apathic.
I think the crowd felt the same fear that the players were starting to feel at that point, and it kind of seeps in. I mean, that's the only logic that you can go by. At that point, you're kind of holding your breath, and you don't realize that you're no longer singing, shouting. That's the only thing that I can come from that. I mean, I'm not much of a singer or shouter, regardless, but I get it. I get how you can kind of get sucked in.
Yep. Well, yeah, it is what it is. Cristiano has just joined us. We're about to wrap up the conversation, but
Oh
Cristiano,
no,
if
we're
Don't
you,
let
not.
me stop you.
Cristiano, if you want to, I mean, we're basically done with this
Done the Porto
conversation.
recap.
But if you want to, whatever you want to get off your chest, you're more than welcome to
I'm
talk about it.
afraid. I'm afraid we don't have enough time left on the pod for me to get whatever it is I have in my chest off. Just,
Uh,
I mean, it's just another terrible performance. I don't want to call it a terrible performance. More so of a terrible result against what I always call Benfica's biggest rival. I don't give a crap about the little club across the highway there. Porto's been our biggest nemesis since I could remember, since I was a very young kid. And just another terrible result, another terrible um,
Heartbreaking.
game tactically set up by the coaching staff. It's one of those games where Benfica didn't necessarily play bad enough to where they deserve to lose this game. But this game, in my opinion, and I know some of you won't like it, but again, I speak the truth, and I can only speak about how I feel. And it's another one of those games where Benfica didn't lose the game. Rui Vitória lost this game for us. And these are the limitations, and these are the things that Steve has mentioned some on occasions. It seemed, I mean, having a conversation with him the other day, he wasn't really digging into Rui Vitória as much as I thought he would. Uh, but you know me, I don't hold back. And I know you could come back at me, and he's a couple of minutes away from hitting a home run and having a good result. Yada 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 yada. If my grandma had balls, she'd be my grandfather. You know what I mean? That's in football is a game of results, not a game of could have beens or could have, should have, would have. Jorge Jesus was a couple seconds away from winning a title at the Dragão. Kelvin obviously broke our heart. I don't see anybody giving credit to Jorge Jesus for that performance. So why in hell would I give credit to Rui Vitoria at home, right? At home, a game that he absolutely had to win. And I don't care what you or anybody else, any diehard Benfiquista or hater Benfiquista wants to come here and tell me that Benfica did not have the pressure of winning this game. Because as I mentioned to you guys a couple of weeks on a podcast, Benfica didn't have this sealed up as many of you thought they did. A lot of you guys were a lot more confident than I was because not just this game, but they have a very tough game coming up as well in 2 weeks at the Alvalade. And it wasn't as cake as a lot of people made it out to be. And so Porto, in my mind, can't stand them SOBs, but they really had no pressure on them, in my opinion. And you could call me up, you could hit me up, do whatever the hell you want to try to convince me otherwise. But to them, they came out in the first half. Benfica, I got to give them credit. They played well in the first half. Porto was in the in the mold of whatever. We'll let Benfica do what they got to do, try to hit them on a counter. Benfica is the one that really needs to win because for us, a draw is a positive result for us because they still have a very tough game. We just have to handle our business the rest of the season. Benfica drops points, boom, we're in there. And so to me, Benfica had the right mindset in the first half. Second half, I mean, guys, I mentioned this, I don't know how many times. How many times do I have to mention this shit? I mean, I've done it over and over and over and over and over, which is Benfica plays a good first half and then they go into halftime and they get out coached and out managed and out withered and out, game management and out tactically and adjustment by the likes of, coaches that you wouldn't even want coaching your kid on a weekend league. You understand what I'm saying? And it happened again. It happened again. Sergio Conceição went and made the right adjustments at halftime. Rui Vitória must have been fixing his perfect hair. And I got to admit, I am very jealous of his hair. Rui Vitória, I'm jealous. I wish I had your hair. But that's not good enough at Benfica. It's good. You could look picture perfect. Your tie could be all set up and all perfect. And your suit could be all pressed and beautiful like Guimarães. That shit don't work at Benfica. You need to earn your money. And I mentioned this before, and I'll keep mentioning it. If Benfica wants to keep this guy around, they need someone, a tactical genius. And I've used the Sir Alex Ferguson example a million times, where he was a tremendous coach but never really won the ultimate goal until a tactical guy and a Carlos Queiroz went in there, started handling the training, started handling the tactical side of the game, and all of a sudden they win the treble. That's exactly what they need on this team if they're going to keep this guy around. Now, the substitutions, I don't understand. Again, he must have really been fixing his hair at halftime because the team really didn't even want to show up in the second half. You could question every single one of those substitutions. The first one, I understand Salvio is a guy that you trust to defend a lot more, and Porto starting to press a little bit more because Benfica was turning the ball over a lot more. And I'm surprised that Porto didn't do that in the first half because if you guys roll back the tape, I thought they demolished us in the first game at the Dragão with their high pressure. They didn't allow Benfica to touch the ball. And I'm surprised they didn't implement that a lot earlier and they waited until the second half. But, maybe it was one of their ploys that, going into their game. We'll just sit back and at halftime we'll come back and, we'll do what we have to do. Let them tire themselves out. Let's just hope to keep everything close and keep it tied. And then Salvio comes in. To his credit, he didn't play terribly bad. But once you take out Rafa, it allows Porto to push up. Porto knows there's not many guys on the field that could create on their own and beat my guys with speed. Not many. And the other one was Servi, who he then goes ahead and substitutes off the pitch. And then he brings in a Seferovic after that, right? And I'm going to give you guys the reason why he brought in a Seferovic. You guys ready for this? You guys ready?
Go.
Height.
There's a couple minutes to go in the game. He figured, shit, you know what? I'll pull this off. I got to draw. But you know what? I'm going to get criticized by the diehards because there's some they're going to say I should have gone for a result here. I should have gone for the victory, being the team in first place, the team that still has to play a crosstown rival, right? Playing at home. There are some that are not going to be happy with the result, and they're going to criticize me. So you know what? I'm going to make it look like I'm looking for a result because I'm going to get a draw out of this.
Yeah.
And I look smart. I didn't look like I was a wuss. I didn't look like I was sitting back. That's exactly what happened. And then the other thing, and then I want to end it here, right? Because I've been talking for way too long. And then trust me, ladies and gentlemen, I can keep going. But I want to end it on this, right? From what I hear, thankfully, Jonas wasn't paralyzed in a wheelchair or he wasn't carrying his freaking his right leg in a Louis Vuitton bag like the players like to carry, anything like that, right? It was nothing severe. Am I wrong here or am I correct? It was nothing major.
Exhaustion,
right?
from what I
exhaustion.
Calling it
Exhaustion, right? What about a little bit of poker game? How about, you know what, John, you're not going to play, but let me bring you on a bench to let Sergio Conceição, to let the opposition think, shit, I have to maybe, just maybe, hold back on some of my moves because they still got that ace in the pocket. How about some of that? But no, there is no imagination with this guy. There is no creativity. It's just blasé. It's blah, 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 blah. We will shit on the Rio Aves and the Passo Freiras and the Vitória Setúbals of the world, and then we'll pray for a miracle against our rivals. And Rui Vitória after 19 tries, still has the same amount of wins as I do, as Cristiano Oliveira has against Football Club de Porto, which is 0.
There you go. That was the stat that I was going to go into. 19 games, 7 ties, 12 losses. At Benfica's helm, 3 draws and 3 losses. And this, by the way, was the first loss at Stadio Luz since February 12th to 2016.
Which was
So
Porto, I believe, right?
it
Was the
was
last team
Porto
to beat
2-1. So 2
Benfica.
years, yeah,
Benfica hasn't beaten Porto at home in 7 tries.
2 years later, we finally lose at Stadio Luz for the league, and it was to the same team that beat us those 2 years ago. 2 years
Look, I could
plus.
sit here and act like a little wanker, a little crybaby, right? Sergio Oliveira should have gotten a red. If not in the first one by grabbing Servi by the neck, at least the second one by grabbing Grimaldo by the neck. Should have seen a second yellow. In my mind, to me, I would have called a penalty on Servi in the last play in the 92nd minute. He stopped his momentum. He totally took him off the ball, stiff arm to the chest. Didn't make a single play on the ball.
Yeah.
What did I say?
He said Servi. It's all right.
Whatever.
We know what you're talking
Zivkovic, I
about.
apologize. Zivkovic, to me, he stiff arm to the chest, didn't attempt to play on the ball. To me, that's a penalty all day. And I don't care, guys. I think you guys have known me for a while. No, you know I am. If it was the opposite, I would have called it. I would have said the same thing. I don't change just because it's in favor of Benfica. I'm giving you my honest opinion, okay? There's a couple of things that could go here and there, but at the end of the day, the teams, and we talk about this, and I talked about this a month ago, 2 months ago, when I talked about the personalities of the 3 different coaches and how the team takes on the coach's personality. And look, Rui Vitoria, I've said it over and over again. It's the type of guy that I want my daughter to come home with, all right? But the guy on the soccer field, he lacks a lot, okay? He lacks a lot. The team took his personality, which is, let's be really nice. We're going to be respectful. I'm going to go to your house. You're going to offer me something to drink, something to eat. I'm going to tell you no because I want to be respectful. I don't want you to dirty your dishes. I don't want you moving anything around because of me. Sergio Conceição, Football Club de Porto type. They go in your house. You tell them not to go anywhere near your fridge. They're going to go in your fridge, eat your whole chicken, and then still hit you with the bones upside your head afterwards when they walk out. Okay? And that's exactly what they did here. Porto came into this game in the second half and said, shit, this might be a little bit better than what we could have, than what we thought. Because for them, I truly believe they were okay with a draw. They were truly okay with walking away with a draw. But they saw how things were. I don't know, Steve. It's just my feeling.
The second half shows me that they wanted to win the match.
Exactly. But no, Steve, you're not listening. You're hearing me, but you're not listening, brother.
Dude, you talk too much. It's hard to keep listening.
You can hear me all day, but listening is what's important. You got to listen to what I say. Coming into the game, they were okay with the draw. Coming into the game in the first half, then they start to see things like, wait, espera ahí. Hold on. Maybe things start turning. Maybe we could have this game. We could end this here. And that's exactly what they did. So, look, credit to them. Credit to Herrera. The dude, I don't think he could have hit it better.
No, it's a perfect shot.
He scored 2 goals this year against in both Clásicos against Benfica. I can't stand the guy. He ain't the prettiest dude, but you know what? He comes to play, and this year at least he stepped up big time for Football Club Porto, and especially in Danilo's absence, the guy's been Mr. Consistency. And on the other hand, we had one legitimate chance, and Mr. Pizzi was more worried about celebrating than he was about putting the ball in the back of the net. And in a game like that, in a game where both teams are even now, both teams have talent on both sides, and they have players that could end the game with one touch. When you miss those chances, you rue those opportunities and you pay for them severely. And that's exactly what happened this weekend.
Yeah. Look, Cristiano, I want to let you go because let you go meaning let you talk and get things off your chest, because I think that you and I spoke earlier and you had very good valid points, and people that know Cristiano know that Cristiano has very strong personality, and he has a lot of conviction on what he believes in, and I don't disagree with a lot of things that Cristiano says. And look, I have to subscribe to a lot of the things that he says. If you guys listen to the podcast on a regular basis, you know that we're not the biggest fans of Vitoria. And nonetheless, I didn't want this to be a Vitoria bashing session, because I think that we've bashed him enough over the years that everybody knows where we stand with him. So for us to be repeating ourselves over and over, it's kind of wasting our time. I've already mentioned that, and as Cristiano again mentioned after me, that the substitutions are reactionary. He's not making moves from the beginning to change the game in our favor. Rather, he's reacting to what he's seeing. And when you're reacting to what you're seeing, you're kind of exposing yourself, and you kind of leaving the opposition to do what they want when you're not taking the game by the scruff. Right. So we'll just move on from this game, and as I mentioned, there's a lot of things that could have gone right, and a lot of things that could have gone wrong. In hindsight, everything is 2020. So the biggest question here is, where do we go from here, right? So we got 4 games left. We got a tough game now. It's Estoril that we get into in a little bit, but now losing to Porto, we also give up the head-to-head now. So we actually need to either Porto lose 3 points in a game, lose a game, which they haven't done much this season, or to actually tie 2 games. There's still two very difficult games for Porto to play. One is going to Maritim, where they haven't won in quite a bit, and then finishing up in Guimarães, with that, despite Guimarães not having anything to play for, Peseiro could be the coach that would have something to say. But nonetheless, I mean, being up north, I don't know how the relations are between those guys. So, but still, 4 games to go, and then it ain't over till it's over. But it definitely became a lot more difficult with the loss this weekend.
Look,
Uh,
4 games to go, 4 games to go, and I'd rather eat crow for the next 4 months in the summer, right? Than have to go through the misery that I'm going to go through, right? So I hope Benfica finds a way to win all 4 games and Porto loses all 4 games. That's what I'm praying for every single night before I say my Ave Marias and Pai Nostras before I go to bed. I'm praying for that, all right? But let's be realistic. Porto has barely dropped any points all season. They dropped a couple points. They hit a little rough stretch. Now we're going to expect them to just drop points like that? I don't see it, but I'm praying that it does. And I'll tell you right now, I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. The only way Rivitoria comes back is if Benfica's champion. I don't care if they finish second. You get rid of him. I don't want this guy back because this is a disastrous year out of the Champions League. The worst in the history of Portuguese clubs. In the history of Portuguese clubs. The worst performance ever. Out of the Taça of Portugal, out of the Taça of Cerveja. And then I know Alfredo, I know you and a lot of other guys. And I feel for the guy in a certain way because he's a nice guy. And I think Benfica set him up to fail. They didn't exactly give him the weapons or the adequate players that we would have liked, right? But at the end of the day, he was right there. He was in the lead with that garbage roster that some will tell you that he has, right? He was in the lead and he fumbled it at the Stadio de Luz at home against his biggest rival.
Yeah, I mean, when it's all said and done, I mean, we could sit here and talk for a half hour or more about the mistakes that, or the lack of investment that there was in the team from the beginning, especially on a year where you could perform something, or you could achieve something that has never been done in the club's history. Nonetheless, there's still 4 games, and the next game, Estoril, which it's this Saturday at 8:30 local. And Estoril has been struggling. They're in 17th place, just one above last place. 7 wins, 5 ties, and 18 losses for a total of 26 points. The last 5 games against Benfica at the Coimbra de Mota, 5 wins for Benfica. Last 10, 9 wins, 1 draw. They at home this year, 4 wins, 3 ties, and 8 losses. And in the first round, 3-1 win by Benfica with goals from Salvio, Krovinovic, and Jonas. The thing that, and I think that, again, if you guys listen to this podcast on a weekly basis, this is a game that worries me. I don't know at this point if there's anything that this team is not focused on but to win. But I think this is going to be a Estoril team that's going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder, because when they played that game against Porto, where they had to stop the game at the half because of issues with the stands, then they came back, played the first 35, the second 30, 45 minutes, and they gave up 3 goals in like 10, 15 minutes. And everybody started saying how Porto had bought this game. And then there was that thing about Porto transferring some money to Estoril to pay some old debts, so on and so forth. So I think that there's a lot of players that felt that their integrity has been questioned, whether or not that was the right thing to do or not. But I think that these Estoril players, despite having to still play to stay above or to stay in the first division, are players that are probably going to play with a little bit extra motivation, because their pride is hurt. So we'll see what happens. But I think that now is not the time to give up on this Benfica. Yes, things look bleak, and the future doesn't look as bright as it was 5 days ago. But we need to keep supporting this team.
But Alfredo, what exactly do you mean when you say don't give up? Go ahead, because I got something real wise to say to you. I just want to see what your answer is. What
Well,
exactly you mean? What do you mean? What exactly you mean? Don't give up. You mean don't give up like the fans at the freaking stadium that they have to play sound from the speakers?
That's
Is that what
exactly
it
right.
is?
That's
Don't
exactly right.
give up.
That's exactly right.
You want me to scream from my couch? Because I know the people at the stadium is screaming. So should I be screaming from? Is that what you mean? Don't give up? Because all the faith in the world is going to make a difference.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, because the atmosphere at Stadio de
Vergonha.
Luz in that
Stay
second
home.
half was
Stay home.
palpable.
You want to stay home and eat popcorn and be quiet and be stay home. You want to go to the stadium over there and act like you're at a freaking 6-star restaurant. Stay home. Embarrassing. Playing sound from the speakers. I'm telling this season. I mean, thankfully, you guys gonna like this one, but thankfully I don't have a lot of hair, because if I did, I'd be losing it. You know what I mean? I lose it all already, because it's between the corruption off the field, the coaching on the field, the players leaving, the players not coming. Yeah, and to me, in my opinion, I'd rather have an empty stadium than have a full stadium and my club play sound through the speakers.
Well,
I mean, that's embarrassing.
in the middle of the game.
That's embarrassing.
That
And
this,
you know what's sad, Steve? You know what's sad, Steve? You know what's sad? You there, Steve, or did you lose your internet connection?
I'm here.
Okay. You know what's sad, Steve? I'm over here texting our good friend, Mr. Patrick Kendrick, right? Hey, Pat, you hear that started to lose? Man, that's how I fell in love with Benfica when I was a little kid, when the started to lose was hooting and hollering and chanting SOB. Bro, and now come to find out, it was all speaker sound. Like, what? Like, you understand what I'm saying?
I don't know if that's right. I know for a fact that the speaker, towards the end of the game, got on the mic and started that Benfica chant. But I don't know if they actually are pumping out crowd noise through the speakers.
They did. They pumped. That's what they pumped out. They pumped out from what I read, they pumped. I guess I don't know what the hell I read anymore. Now you're making me question everything. I'm questioning everything now. I don't even know nothing anymore.
Right. So anyway, no, I'm just saying. Look, that there's a lot of people that have checked out. You know, that probably the same people that were eating popcorn and sitting in their seats at Stade de Luge when the team needed them the most. But I just think that there's still 4 games left to go, and I think that there's still a chance, right? While it's mathematically possible, I think that's still a chance. And how does it go? Esperança é a última coisa a morrer.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The good thing is, if they handle their business and Porto slips up, we're all celebrating at the Marquês. And if Porto handles their business, Benfica isn't able to catch up, maybe we'll get Marco Silva as a consolation prize.
Hey, all right. I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else to say. I'm Cristiano, I'm glad that you came on and you had
I just feel bad because Steve got
monologue.
quiet.
No.
I just feel bad.
Steve and I were done talking about the Porto game, so we hit on a lot of points and we had a lot of discussion. And I think that a lot of things that you said were echoed by us, but you had your own twist and your own not twist in a sense that you're twisting the reality, but you have your own opinion and how you through your eyes what you felt. And I think that a lot of what you said even though that it echoed our some of the feelings that Steve and I mentioned previously to you coming on. It also added on to the feeling that we had expressed earlier. So that's about it. That's all I got. I wanted to wish Mario M. Dot a happy birthday, Mario Mota. It's his birthday today. We usually don't do a lot of this, but Mario's a huge fan of the podcast and
Feliz aniversário, pa.
a
Happy
huge
birthday.
Now
yeah.
we're about to get hate tweets from somebody in Greece. I hate when you do this, Alfredo. Oh man, I'm gonna get hate mail now. Oh yeah.
No, so and the other thing for you guys who haven't been following, Benfica will be in North America this summer. They will be in Pittsburgh and in Harrison, New Jersey. Cristiano and I are planning on attending both of those games, so hopefully we'll get together with some people and watch those games. The other third game of that competition, which is the International Champions Cup, will be in Switzerland against
Is it
who are they?
Switzerland or
Sevilla.
Zurich?
Zurich is in Switzerland.
No. I don't, yeah, whatever. I missed that day in class. What's the German? What's the German city with a Z? I thought it was in Germany. I thought I read it was in Germany. I don't know, dude.
Cristiano
Calma.
Zusseldorf.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Zurich. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, they're playing Sevilla, right? They're playing
Yeah.
Sevilla. I thought it was.
Yeah.
Could have sworn it was in Germany. It wasn't. Dude, ever since Sunday, I've been all discombobulated, yo. I apologize.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for checking us out. I don't even know if there's any Twitter questions. I guess I should check to see if there's any
I'll try to go on quickly.
Twitter questions. Let me check real quick while I'm here. Latest. All right, here's one from Mateus Medeiros. I think it's the only one. Do you think this late goal loss is worse than Kelvin's if we lose the Liga?
No.
And I think that Kelvin one was much worse, but I think they both hurt just as much.
You know why this one, the Kelvin one's probably worse? Because we hadn't won a title for a while and it looked like we were getting close, and maybe that one would have hit harder.
Nah, and our coach fell to his knees, and we're still hearing about that to this day. I mean, and I think the like we had such I mean, both clubs. I mean, really, both clubs were stacked at the time. We had such a good team that I think the hopes and aspirations of a lot of people, and then it's, you're thinking you got this, you got this in the books. But then again, if you look back at that year, the game, they lost the Campeonato the week before against Estoril, and Jefferson from midfield crosses the ball, and the dude was, I don't know, watching papagayos or whatever the hell it was in between near post. But yeah, I mean, it's very similar, you know what I mean? Very similar situation, but I would just think that one is a little bit worse. But that's because we've gone through it for years now. We put up for years with the mocking of that whole situation. Maybe in 5 years, and if Porto's able to hold on, in 5 years we'll be hearing about this Herrera stuff. And so, some people might actually think it's worse because Benfica was actually in the lead in this one. Same thing like that. I mean, it's the same thing actually, really, if you look at it.
Look, it hurts. It does hurt a lot, but I think it hurts more when you're ahead 8 points and you give up the lead, and you end up losing the championship.
Yeah, but see, I don't take any consolation in that. I don't.
No, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
And let me explain, son. Let me explain for you. And I love you, Alfredo. I got the ultimate respect for you. We've known each other for over 20-something years. I love you, but even you, and I'm gonna give you a piece of it. Stop with those jokes at that side of the room, because they might still get the last laugh. So I hate when people
I don't care.
Okay, fine. I do, because when you're home next year playing in Europa League, and let's be a little bit more humble. I'll talk crap in the off season.
If there's not going to be another investment on the team, I'd much rather we stay out of all competitions.
Well, in a way, Benfica might actually be praying for that, Luis Pipieta, because then it gives them a reason not to go and spend money. Oh, we don't need to spend it. We're in the Europa League.
Yep.
So we'll never know.
Cristiano and I will be at the Alvalade for the game against Sporting on May 5th.
Shit, it's a good thing I don't have the IRS tracking me, because if I did, you just gave me away.
Well, he's still undecided, but we'll figure it out. All right, guys. Thanks
Ciao.
everybody for listening, and sorry
Love
about
you
the
guys.
ass kicking, the shit kicking, and the depressing podcast. But hopefully next week it'll be a happier one. Thanks a lot for checking us out. Happy birthday to Mario and anybody in Greece whose birthday falls on the same date.
All right, guys. I gotta go. I gotta go order my Maritimu shirt. You know
Take
what I'm
care.
saying?
See you, everybody.
See you
Bye.
guys. Peace.